Good morning. My name is Jim Munro, and I feel like I should introduce myself before I get started. Because to be honest, I haven't had all that much chance to meet all that many South Church folks, and I really wish I had. My wife Pam and I started attending church several years ago at Christmas time. We loved it right away, but held off committing to becoming members for a bit. When I finally decided that I wanted to sign the book, it was literally just a couple of days later that we found out we were without ministers. So that idea got put on hold for a bit. In the meantime, Pam and I both signed up for small group ministry and met some really great people, which convinced me that I really wanted to be a member. So last summer, while we still had an interim minister, Pam and I made a couple of appointments with Jen's help and finally became members. We started attending more regularly in the fall, and we're bringing our granddaughter Lily with us most weeks because she just loves to go to nursery and spending time with Barney and the other great volunteers. By last winter, I was ready to really jump in and get involved. I volunteered for the Pocket Garden Tour, the Fellowship Associates, to host a circle supper, and I even stepped way out of my comfort zone and offered to play my tin whistle during the Celtic Music Sunday service. You may recall, that was the first of our remote services. If I was a paranoid person, I might begin to think that the universe was trying to tell me that I shouldn't get involved. So anyway, Pam and I live in Dover with our two dogs. Before coming to the Seacoast, we were members of the North Parish in North Andover, Massachusetts for many years. We missed it, we missed our friends there, and I'm really glad we found this community and are making new friends. The late UU minister, the Reverend Wayne Chattee, told me once that whenever you craft a sermon or an entire worship service, that it's important to remember that there is at least one person in attendance that day who has come because he or she is in need of comfort. If you're that person, I sincerely hope that something I say today gives you that comfort. I've been told in my life that I'm a control freak. That is absolutely not true. I'm a control enthusiast. Yes, it's true that I've been known to rearrange the dishes in the dishwasher, and I do have a tendency to suggest the best way for my wife to make cookies, or how much ice is needed in a cocktail glass. But that's just me trying to be helpful. I do think that the fact that we are born with a limited amount of patience, and if you use it up, you can't get more from Amazon. Not yet, anyway. Interestingly enough, there have always been some things in life that I knew were completely out of my control. Snowstorms, delayed flights, crazy family members, or even construction season on Route 95. Those are all things that I could just be still, let go, and just roll with whatever punches life threw at me. But here we are. It's October of 2020. John Lennon said it best when he sang, "Nobody told me there'd be days like these. Strange days indeed." The former Beatle had a talent for understatement. These have been truly strange days. It was a struggle for me to accept that I really could not control the world right now. It was a process of personal growth for me. I've learned to accept that 2020 is like a 12-month blizzard. And when it finally stops, we're all going to come out and make snow angels. It's been a challenge for sure, but I hope my journey will ring true for you, and maybe I can share how I made it through. During the last year, I suspect most of us have experienced every conceivable human emotion. We've experienced frustrations, anger, despair, loneliness, isolation, helplessness, disappointments, and we've probably all dealt with a certain amount of depression before ultimately arriving at a stage of acceptance. I've been through all of these and more. Most of us probably thought life would be back to a complete sense of normalcy by the end of June. We were planning to go out to eat, rescheduling vacations and family events. Surely we'd be able to send our kids and grandchildren back to school by September. Guess what? They say God laughs when we make plans. Truer words have never been spoken, and I imagine God is probably getting a good chuckle at our expense. We're in the midst of a worldwide pandemic that no one alive has ever experienced. Add to that, in our country, we are experiencing a deep sense of division. No matter where you stand on the political issues, we are experiencing a divisiveness unseen since Lincoln was president. Very, very few people had any professional training on how to deal with this. For those like our professional staff here at South Church, Jen, Kirsten Hunter, Jen Del Deo, Joanne, Susan Adams and the Reverend Susan, and the volunteers that have held us all together and made this work, I just can't say enough what an incredible job that you've done so far. It's so much more than you signed up for. You're in my thoughts, and if you are a teacher or a parent trying to work from home and be a teacher at the same time, I salute you too. You've worked so very hard trying to get it right. I wouldn't switch places with you for any amount of money. In his poem, The Peace of All Things, my favorite poet, essayist, and farmer, Wendell Berry writes, "When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds, and I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time I rest in the grace of the world and am free." I don't have the luxury of sleeping outdoors to listen to the sound of wild things. I wish I did, but in downtown Dover, it's far more likely that I might encounter a hungry raccoon or a skunk than a wild drake. I have, however, discovered and rediscovered ways to appreciate the world, my fellow humans, and ultimately to hear the message that I really have no control over what happens around me. I would never try to tell you how to deal with any of this, but I will share those moments that have made me feel best. Own your feelings and emotions. I discovered early on last spring that I was a basket full of negative emotions. I sat down each morning for about 10 days straight and wrote about the emotions of the day. I won't share what I wrote, but I found the writing to be cathartic. I faced each emotion in all its raw pain, learned where it was coming from, and let it go. Embrace the fact that none of us are alone in this struggle. In fact, the very fact that we are all in this together in many ways has brought us all closer. Many years ago, I was struggling with a personal family problem, and I really felt as though I was the only person who had ever dealt with this problem. The Reverend Frank Clarkson was the assistant minister at the North Parish Church at the time. I'll never forget and will always be grateful for his wise and kind words when he pointed out that we all have our own private struggles and not everybody shares them. Embrace the isolation. I've always admired those who are able to live a monastic lifestyle. I've learned on many days to, like a monk, to appreciate being alone. Thomas Merton wrote, "What a thing it is to sit absolutely alone. The quiet that comes from spending time in reflection has been incredibly inspiring to me. Also, like many monastic communities, I've learned to enjoy the quiet times that come from working alone with my hands. Baking bread, chopping vegetables to make pickles, slicing apples for pie are all great opportunities for a time of working meditation when the house is empty. On the other hand, we are social beings and we need contact with one another. Reach out to friends. I've had friends, old and new, just call or send a text to ask, "How are you doing?" They've turned into great conversations. We've caught up, we've commiserated, complained, laughed, even had a few tears together. Help people. I enjoy time spent volunteering. I suspect in our church community, most of us do. There are so many opportunities to help people who really need help in our communities and even in our families. For example, our daughter and son-in-law, who are both essential workers, were without daycare for a time in the spring. So Pam and I opened up our own private Montessori school for our granddaughter. We cooked, we hiked, gardened, and learned about bugs. It was a lot of work, but it was fun work and a memory to cherish. Our own Jim Munro has been transporting food from a food pantry to a distribution point in Dover. Inspired by his leadership, I discovered that it's a pretty easy task, and I was glad to lend a hand. When you help someone who needs it, you realize you're doing okay. Get involved. I attended a Black Lives Matter rally in Dover. I felt connected to so many people that shared my values. And for a little bit, I felt 18 again. It took 50 years off my attitude. We have time on our hands. Use it, but don't just use it to be busy. Enjoy taking time for things you've always wanted to do. Learn a new skill or expand on an existing one. I was ignoring my photography work because I couldn't get to the places that I love to shoot at. One morning I went out and shot an entire roll of film before breakfast. It felt so good to be creative again. Do you play an instrument? It's a great time to learn a new one, or a new tune, or maybe just to compose one. This extra time we've been given is a gift, I think. We have a future to look forward to. We really do. I've decided to make a commitment to that future. I've been told that starting a garden is a great way to show you believe in the future. So I did. It's a tiny little raised bed with a giant cucumber plant and some beans and peppers. But it's ours, and the pickles are delicious. I even started a backyard compost pile, and by the time I get done, our yard will look like the Findhorn Garden. There will someday be a post-COVID world. It's our future and it's our children's future. I want to make it the best future we can have. When I was asked to speak today, I was honored, but at the same time, I was incredibly intimidated. I've seen so many of you deliver some wonderful messages from the pulpit during this period of transition in our community, but I'm so very glad I said yes. As I've sat here on my deck writing this message, I finally faced the monstrous control enthusiast. We've done battle, and we've arrived at a truce. But I've learned from the struggle, and I've learned something else very important about myself and my fellow control enthusiasts. We're warriors. That's what the need for control really is. And we are worried that if we can't fix or change things we want. Mary Oliver said it best. I worried. I worried a lot. Will the garden grow? Will the rivers flow in the right direction? Will the earth turn as it was taught? And if not, how shall I correct it? Was I right? Was I wrong? Will I be forgiven? Can I do better? Will I ever be able to sing? Even the sparrows can do it, and I am, well, hopeless. Is my eyesight fading? Or am I just imagining it? Am I going to get rheumatism, lockjaw, dementia? Finally, I saw that worrying had come to nothing, and I gave it up. I took my old body and went out into the morning and sang. My friends, it's time to stop worrying. I've found my way through this dark time and in many ways learned to appreciate it. Thank you so much for being part of my community and giving me the opportunity to share these thoughts with you. I hope with all my heart that in all this craziness that you have found ways to find comfort in your life. May you find comfort knowing that we have a strong and loving congregation that is here to support you. May you find comfort in knowing that you can make a difference. And may you find comfort just knowing that it's not all up to you. Namaste.